Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows? Only time. And who can say if your love grows as your heart shows? Only time.
Welcome to history class. This week we're talking about the Eastern Roman Empire, also known as the Byzantine Empire. Yesterday, we talked about Emperor Constantine, the man who set it up, and the man who made Christianity legal, so it's no longer allowed to hurt Christians. We talked about the empires that spread out after the Roman Empire fell. The Eastern Roman Empire kind of stepped in and took over after a while. A lot of the territory that used to belong to the old Roman Empire got taken over by the new Roman Empire, which of course didn't make the Catholic Church very happy, but we'll talk more about that on Thursday. The Eastern Roman Empire continued to grow and become strong and powerful. What was life like in the Eastern Roman Empire? Well, for many years, it was much like it was in the Western Roman Empire. A lot of their art, almost all of their art, in fact, was dedicated to religion. Some of it was dedicated to Christian religion. Some of it was dedicated to the pagan, the wrong religions. A lot of the buildings that still stand to this day in that area were built as religious buildings, most famously this one here. That's called the Church of the Hagia Sophia, or the Holy Wisdom. Okay, but this sort of thing meant a lot to the Byzantines. But life, as it was a lot of it was lived the same way that was lived in the Roman Empire. Basically, either you were a Roman citizen or you were nothing. And the Roman citizens had the right to pretty much do anything they wanted to anybody else, so long as they were paying their taxes and obeying the Roman laws. It was kind of a confusing system until this man came to power. This is Emperor Justinian I. His uncle, who was called Justin, was the emperor before him. When Justin died, he left everything to Justinian. Now, Justinian, being the leader of one of the strongest powers on earth at this time, could have said, you know what? We'll just go ahead and leave everything the way it is. It's okay. It's doing well for me. But no. He had learned some things from the fall of Rome. And he said, no, if we want to keep this empire strong, one of the things we have to do is we have to make better laws. The laws in our country are not fair. They're fair if you are a Roman citizen. They're fair if you are a part of the nobility. But what about the average man on the street? What about the slaves? There were still loads and loads of slaves in the Byzantine Empire. Justinian said, no, we need to do something about this. We need to fix it. And so he sat down and wrote out something that's called the Justinian Code. The Justinian Code made life a lot more fair for people. For example, now I said there was slavery in the Eastern Roman Empire. That did not change. But now the masters had to take care of their slaves. They couldn't just do whatever they wanted to do. They had to treat them fairly. So yes, there was still slavery, and that was a bad thing, but it was a step up for them. Fathers had to treat their families fair. Under the old Roman Empire, the father was the head of the household. He could do whatever he wanted to whoever he wanted to in his family. If you made your dad mad, he could kill you, and he could get away with it because he was the head of the family. But Justinian said, no, that's not fair. Parents have to treat their families better than this. He wrote down laws concerning punishments for crimes. They were made more fair. Things that weren't being punished at all, he made illegal. And one of the people who helped him, especially with this, was his wife, Theodora. Theodora came, and she looked over his laws and said, Emperor Justinian, my husband, my darling, what about women? And Justinian said, well, what about women? And she said, well, you have all these laws. What about all these laws for women? They need to be protected too. Why aren't you helping them? And so Justinian wrote some laws for women as well. Women were made, they weren't made as equals, they weren't as important as men, but they were at least acknowledged as human beings. Empress Theodora wanted to make life easier for women, especially the ones who had no husbands or sons to look after them. And so she sat down with her husband. They wrote out laws for the protection and the better treatment of women. So life under the Eastern Roman Empire was a lot more fair. It was a lot better for people than it was under the Roman Empire. It wasn't perfect. But the Justinian Code made big steps in helping justice to be made for more people. And a lot of our laws today still stem from the Justinian Code. Okay, so that's what we have for today. Let's go over our questions for today. Question number 1, who was the Byzantine Empire's greatest emperor? I may have overstated that question. I may have said a little bit too much about that. Maybe he wasn't the greatest emperor that the Byzantine Empire ever had, but he was certainly one of the most important. And he was Justinian I. Question number 2, what was the name of his wife? Her name was Theodora, or possibly Theodora. I don't know old pronunciations like that. And question number 3, what were his laws known as? His laws were known as the Justinian Code. They're named after him. Okay. Tomorrow we'll talk about what eventually happened. No, we won't. Not tomorrow. We'll talk about on Thursday. What eventually happened to the Byzantine Empire. Okay, so come back Thursday as we wrap up this